Hey, welcome to Coffee Tech Talk. It's another Tuesday and it's springtime, but it's still March, right? Is it still March, Marty? My name's Sean Ferguson, by the way. That's Marty Rowe, somewhere up or down or somewhere. I don't know where we're at these days, but it's great to see you again, man. How's it been?
It's been great. Busy, crazy busy.
Crazy busy. Why? Why is springtime a busy time? Is it busier now than it was in the wintertime? Or is it because of the stimulus checks? Everybody got some stimulus money, went out and bought some new espresso machines, some grinders, all that stuff. What do you think?
Well, I don't know about that. If you're going to compare it to over the winter time, there's a lot of people just kind of hunkered down with COVID and winter time, not knowing what's coming along. But they're kind of coming out of the woodwork. They're, seemingly with more confidence now. Several cafes opening, so we're involved with that. A couple of trucks that are getting launched, we're working with them. So yeah, things are happening. And then
that's right. Things are happening.
Things break down all the time. So
things are breaking down all the time. I got a Ford Transit Connect, broke down and got rid of it. Just done with it. Not going to do it. And I also got a new career position. So
well, congratulations.
Balanced out my life, between espresso machine equipment repair and then also this green coffee sourcing. So just to share a little bit on that, if I can make my mouse work, there it is. This is the team that I work with. Early, who is right next to me, I met him a couple of years ago, and he lives in Jaén in Peru. And when I came across the team in Jaén, but also headquarters in Quebec, Canada, and they also have a project in Santa Marta, Colombia, I kind of found it, a different level of connection, and also like interwoven sort of attributes of what sustainability could be. So like this reevaluating or kind of like rethinking about what sustainability looks like in coffee really dawned on me when I started looking at what Ecotierra and Eleva Finca are doing on the ground. Not only are they selling fair trade and organic coffees, which are absolutely important to cooperatives, but they're going a little bit more in depth by providing like quality control assurance in the lab. Also, there's a dry mill being built in collaboration with the cooperatives that helped kind of design and construct this. And over the course of the next 14 years, those cooperatives, actually about 6 of them or so, there's an alliance of cooperatives that are going to take ownership over that dry mill, which then will kind of like capture a little bit more of that value in the supply chain. So a little bit more of that money can kind of stay with the cooperatives and, like be contributed to the memberships of those co-ops. And then the list goes on, but it's been fun to kind of reach out to a lot of the exporters and the importers and the other roasters that are out there. And let me tell you this, keep a close eye on your importers out there, because you will see some coffees that are coming from the Arabica Alliance this summertime. So in June or July, call up your favorite importer and be like, hey, you got that spot coffee that John was talking about, and with Eleva Finca in Peru, and they will say, no, because it was so good, it's already gone. Tough luck. You should have contracted early. So give me a call now, and we can book.
That sounds great.
Yeah. And another thing about Eleva Finca, I'm just rambling. This is my commercial time. Is we don't add any fees onto the FOB price. So if you know what that means, that's great. If not, we're going to have an episode about that maybe in a week or two, and talk about what FOB is and what Eleva Finca does and does not do. As far as we're not an importer or we're not a broker, we're a coordinator of certain projects that are based and working with cooperatives. We work for the cooperatives. So if the cooperatives are not successful, we're not doing our job. So yeah, we're hired by the co-ops to help market this coffee. So there's my pitch.
There's your pitch.
How about your pitch? What are you doing at Workbench with your logo? How's that coming along?
Got the logo. We're still moving a little slow. We really want to get a little more comfortable with COVID and getting closer, because we've crunched some numbers and it's difficult. And I know there's some people out there doing it, and some people out there being on the learner side of it, doing strictly online stuff with no face-to-face. But our philosophy and the way that we actually like to learn and like to teach, requires a lot of face-to-face, a lot of hands-on, a lot of saddle time, if you will. And so we want to do it right when we relaunch and get things going. Getting a lot of curriculum written up, a lot of stuff. So when we launch, look out. It's
Well, hey, when you have the
it'll be
voltmeter
great.
class, sign me up. I'll pay. I'll
Absolutely.
pay you cash money. I could, or Venmo, whatever you take. And maybe Dietrich and I can come down after I get my second COVID shot this Friday. I think Dietrich, you're on board for vaccinations, and Marty, do you have one yet? You got?
I have one. I have one, and in about 2 weeks, I'll get the other.
That's
So
exciting.
like once we're all vaccinated, yeah, once we're all vaccinated, right, Dietrich? That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, I'm up on the 9th. Yeah, I did some food handling, so that allowed me to get the vaccine. So I was like, I'm taking that. My girlfriend just got vaccinated too about a week ago. So
we should absolutely get together down at the shop, Marty, and you can run us through, what to do, what not to do, and I can kind of maybe not goof around too much and like be stupid about things, but just be like, what's this for?
Live coffee tech talk sounds great when we get the opportunity.
Hey,
yeah, absolutely.
Guess what else is coming up?
You tell me.
Boom, stamps.
Boom.
April 9th. Espresso drinks. 4 different types. You go to your local post office and buy some stamps that says cappuccino. And again, the latte art is questionable, as Dietrich mentioned. In the wintertime, they're like, they didn't really think about the positioning of the handle. And I was like, kudos, points to you, Dietrich, for being a good judge. That's awesome. Anyway, April 9th, get them while they're forever, 55 cents or whatever,
You are so up on everything.
Well, yeah, check this out. Boom, Clubhouse. You know what this is?
I guess I'm not hip.
Yeah, I don't know who this is, but I do know that this is an app that,
Okay.
oh shoot, I was gonna have like my notes, but I don't have my notes. Anyway, it's an app that's only available to iPhone users. So I'm sorry for people out there that do not have iPhone users. They'll probably open it up, but it's in beta testing right now. And it's like it's a place where you can sign in. I think it's by invitation only at this point. Once you get in there, there's these kind of groups or chat rooms. It sounds like this has already been done before, but this is kind of a unique idea where you can join rooms or conversations like podcasts, and they have maybe a panel of 10, maybe 5 or 15 people, with the access. It's like a Zoom call with 15 people, but then there's this huge audience that if someone raises their hand, they can call and be introduced into that room. So there are some interesting people, coffee people in Clubhouse, and I've been talking with some of them about looking at, re-envisioning or reevaluating what sustainability looks like in the coffee supply chain. So look out for that. If you're on Clubhouse, find me, and then we'll get you in the chat room, and we will be talking with some really interesting people, some really well-known folks in the coffee industry that know about the same amount of information about tech that you do, Marty, but in the supply chain, and it's only voice, and after it's done, there's no recording, it's done. So it's kind of like an ongoing conversation, let's say. So every week it's kind of the same people. You can introduce new people and just kind of have this conversation, and you're both all welcome. Just need to get an iPad or an iPhone. Yeah, I don't know. Just find them off the street.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the new thing for me this last week. I'm kind of like, I still don't know if it's any, I don't know, but it seems like the kids are liking it these days. So can we go vintage?
Sure. Hey, but before you do, one of the things I reposted today, and I need to call and find out some more about it. Some friends of ours that we've worked with over the years, they developed a company called Tone, and Tone just got an award for one of the best new products through the FCA, and it is a tankless or a no boiler coffee brewer. And so I'm anxious to get some more information on that. And it's to scale. I mean, it does, commercial pots of coffee.
Do you think it's like the tubular, sort of like the circular?
I don't know. It looked pretty stylish, pretty European looking. It's really cool looking in the picture. I shared it and look it up, SCA, on their website.
Well, let's get them on the show, whoever they are.
Yeah, we'll get Tone on it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to hear about that. That'd be interesting stuff. So this is a little vintage, and so this is Maria from 1988. It's from a famous movie that I saw last night. But look at those earrings.
Look at the earrings.
Aren't those beautiful? Like this has become like a famous, I couldn't stop staring at them for the entire film. And she was one of the main characters, and it was sort of like a, captured in a couple rooms. So she like wore these throughout most of the film. And then I started Googling it later, and it's kind of like a thing. It's like, look at her earrings. But anyway,
I might have to get my ears re-pierced for that.
1988.
Those are hip.
It's from one of my favorite directors, Pedro Almodovar, and it's Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. And it was playing at the Ross downtown. So check it out. And I had to go practice my Spanish, got to keep it up.
Top of my favorite list there.
And, right. Staying with the red decor, check that out. Now that might be on the top of your list. Have you got one of those, don't you?
I do. I have a white one. We need to get them together. And,
right, red and white.
Pull some shots.
So this was the second time I've ever tried to attempt fixing a home unit that I had no idea how it worked. So with 4 screws, the panel comes off, and it just wasn't sucking up any water. So, because of you, Marty, I knew that it was an Oker pump, but I didn't know if you could just change them out. And it seems like that you could do that. So is that kind of like a common, pump that goes into almost all these home machines?
They're very, very common. It's hugely common. It's a good pump, but they do go out. They do wear out. The hardest thing has this thing set for a while, because one of the hardest things you can do to a pump is to let it set for extended period of time.
Yeah, I think it was set for a while. My friend Katie brought it over, and
Okay.
saying like, hey, can you take a look at it? And yeah, it was, pretty well put together. I mean, it's super stylish. I love the design. And she pulled some latte art on it recently. Showed me a photo. I wish I had a photo, but it was good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, they're not bad. I mean, for a little home unit, and like you say, the style, that's kind of a style that just won't go out of style.
Yeah. Just like Pedro Almodovar's movies, they never go out of style. 1988, those earrings are going to last forever. I love that stuff. Okay, so here comes the home stretch here of what happened here. Now, we haven't talked in a while, and I know a lot's happened. And I've exposed a lot of these things, texting you, and but act like you don't know what's going on. We'll be fine, right? We'll surprise the audience like Marty. Well,
Well, most of the time, it is a surprise.
To be fair, too, when Marty does get asked anything, it's like a 95% chance that he's going to know it right away before you can even get into the clues.
Well, thank you.
Well, hey, so there's what happened here. I think I'm just telling you that little part was put inside of this huge box. They sent it to me this way. Unfortunately, they sent me the wrong part.
Hate it when that happens.
And afterwards, I said, "Hey, you sent me absolutely the wrong part. I didn't need this handle." And they said, "Oh, you can just keep it." I'm like, "Well, I don't want it. I don't want you to recycle my box for me. And why did you send it?" I think they could have gotten away with a smaller box. I don't know, but maybe
that might have even fit in an envelope.
Yeah, and it's,
envelope.
Yeah. I mean, maybe something smaller than that was 12 by 16 box. You could fit a Melconian grinder in there, but maybe that's what they should have put in there and been like, "Oops."
Yeah, you wouldn't have sent that back.
No, I wouldn't have complained. I would have taken that over that part. But anyway, does this happen to you? You ever get a huge box, a little part?
Oh yeah. It does happen. What happens to us, and it's a little bit frustrating. So here's a shout out to some of our parts suppliers. Don't just open a box and pile it in with a whole bunch of stuff and then put foam around it or airbags around it. All that's gonna, let's wrap them individually. That's probably my biggest complaint, is that a lot of the parts places, they get it in the box and tape it up and wish it well.
Well,
they just kind of get mixed up, because I don't know what those people that are hauling those boxes do to them.
I do.
Oh,
they play catch with them. I don't know. It's mostly automated too. So it's sort of, there's a lot of just, bumps and, shakes and drops. So like when you package and stuff, I thought I packaged a K30 really well, Malconing grinder. But now I do double heavy duty box, double box with double layers of everything. And even then I'm still worried about it, but I have not had any problems since that one problem, 100% since then. So yeah, you got to learn the hard way.
But yeah, it can happen. It can happen.
So this was a challenge. This was like a very interesting challenge. This is a 2-group La Marzocco Linea, classic group head. It's been around for a while, about 10 years. And at first, the customer said that there's these 2 metal pieces kind of coming out from the group head. And the first thing I noticed was that the gasket was kind of cracking. And I'm like, well, got to change those gaskets anyway. So let me get out there.
Yeah, I've never used this term in gaskets, but it fits after looking at this picture. It's we use that term with tires. It's weather checked. And when it's weather checked, it's time to change them.
But apparently, okay, so this is a real tricky one, because the information that I got was that these were 2 wires. And they look like they're wires, right?
They look absolutely look like wires.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when I got to on-site, I realized that they were not wire, but they were plastic. And on the bottom there, you see that little plastic piece shoved up in there. And now I know that that's not the same brush, but I do know those brushes that have those type of thistles on them. And I was like, hey, I think what happened here was, I mean, the rest is pretty obvious, but yeah, they were just cleaning the espresso machine. It must have gotten stuck up in there and ripped out some of these. And but the smart thing about it was that they were cautious about, even the idea of it being a dangerous thing. They called somebody. And I wasn't like, well, just go in there and just pull it out with your fingers. But like, there could be no wires coming out of a group head, right?
Not unless, well, I'll just say this.
Right.
There shouldn't be. But some of the newer pieces of equipment have heaters in the heads. And there's a lot of creative technicians out there.
Like retrofitting, like what are those, temp probes or whatever?
Exactly. In fact, some of your comments when you had posted that on your Facebook, there were some good comments that were speculating that might be a temperature probe or something from someone doing some research or putting some kind of logging device, temperature logging device on their equipment.
Well, I think this shows you one point, that in-person visits and being there with the technician matters, because I had resources of technicians all over the world looking at my Facebook and knowing how to clue, because they had false information and they couldn't actually physically be there to do the work. So yeah, COVID has struggled, and there is a very valid point of in-person contact that we're missing out right here. And so again,
that's a pretty good example, because those wires, or what ended up not being wires, sure look like wires. Look copper or there's brass or something sticking out. Absolutely.
Well, hey, I got a video here. This is another week down, and I think you've seen this one. But this was an interesting one. This is something that I learned that I probably should have learned a long time ago, and I probably did. I just forgot. And I'm wondering if it's going to play. Can you hear that? It doesn't matter. There's nothing. So I'm trying to program. Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yep. We can hear you.
And then I go to program again. It doesn't work. Okay, we're gonna keep on going. We're gonna keep on going here. Doesn't work. We go over here. Doesn't work. Nothing.
Yep.
Nothing. Doesn't work. That one works. Wait, that one works. Okay, let's go ahead and try to program it over here. See what happens. All right, we got it buzzing. On. Obviously, I'm not measuring anything there, but. And so that works. All right. So the one on the left doesn't seem to be recording at all, and the right one does. So what happened here?
Well, John, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Hats off to you that you didn't just make the assumption that you had a bad keypad. because 90+% people out there will say, I've been programming this and poking at it, even technicians, and they will call me with the conclusion that they've got a bad keypad.
Oh, no, put my hat back on. Put your hat back on. Because I did assume that it was a key and I had an extra one. So it wasn't a big deal. I was like, I'll just pop it in real quick and see what happens, right?
Well, I appreciate your honesty.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna call myself out like I know what I'm doing, like
Yeah,
most of the time. But I'll
All
tell
right.
you that I will try to, from the basics to the more complicated, I will say like, okay, well, if I got a keypad, let's pop it in and see if it works. That's an easy fix. Don't even need to get my voltmeter out, which, you know, probably could and should.
Yeah,
But
nothing ventured,
no.
nothing gained. That's a pretty easy test. You don't even have to put the new keypad in. Just unplug the ribbon cable, hold it in your hand and try it in your hand and see if it does something different to
Yes, as a
eliminate the,
technician, but not as someone who's you're working by yourself and you don't do that. You let Marty
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
yeah. What happened here? Basically, there's a device in there that's called the flow meter.
Right.
It's like when you buy gasoline, there's something in there that tells you how many gallons you're buying. Well, the same thing that's happening in here. There's a meter in there that all the water flows through the meter, and it's got a little pinwheel that right in the middle of your picture there, there's a kind of a center of a merry-go-round. And on
Right.
top of that goes this little merry-go-round looking thing that has either 2 or 4 magnets. Not that. That's the top. That's the receiving side of it. But um, uh, with every revolution, depending on how many magnets are on top, those magnets give the control board a pulse. And so it knows X amount of pulses means X amount of milliliters. Or it actually, when you're doing the programming, when you go into programming by holding your continuous swirl button, it says, okay, I'm for the next, whenever he pushes the next button, I'm going to just count pulses. That's all I'm going to do. Then when he hits stop, I'm going to record the number of those pulses in a memory bank. And when he hits that same button later, I'm just going to let it run for the same amount of pulses. So in your case, what was happening was those pulses weren't getting to the computer, either wire that was disconnected, the actual flow meter itself was bad. The pinwheel could have been stuck. A lot of calcium gets built up, and if that doesn't freely turn, it won't turn.
Right.
Whatever happened, or you could even have, those are polarity sensitive. I've seen this come out of the factory with those wires wrong, backwards, and it'll record 0. So when you did your recording and there was no pulses getting in there, that it recorded a pulse count of 0. So what that nets you is when you go back to actually replay that by getting out of programming and hitting that, it gives you 0. It gives you what you programmed it to.
And so there's a couple things here too. How do you measure whether or not, like with a, I guess it's you're measuring the flow meter, right, with your voltmeter, and what are you looking for there?
Actually, each manufacturer has specs on it that it should be within a certain tolerance between the 2 points, a certain ohms reading. And then there's a accepted amount to ground. And
Right.
what we find is if you have a substantial conductivity to ground on either of those points, chances are that's a bad flow meter. So if
Or
you've
I mean,
got,
another thing is like looking at, well, since you mostly, if you did have 2 flow meters, you could measure both, and if they're drastically different, something's going on, right? They should be
yeah,
equally reading the same number. So
and I'd love to tell you that, here's the reading that is in tolerance, but every manufacturer, and we've found that over the years, the same manufacturer changes their tolerances over the years.
well, you definitely hit it on the head there. When I don't have a picture of that spinning the pinwheel. I don't know if I must put on the counter on these shots, but like what I wanted to take a picture of that calcium buildup, and that was
Yeah.
absolutely what was happening, because it was probably jamming up the pinwheel so it couldn't turn, and that's why it wasn't working. So when I cleaned that up and removed all of the particulates off that, it
Sure.
ran fine. there were other issues, but there was one
And-
down and 3 to go.
And you're the hero. Now, I will say this little side note. Anytime you pull those apart and you're cleaning that debris out, there's a real good possibility that you're going to knock some loose and not be able to flush it out well enough, and it's going to go downstream. So whatever's downstream, and if there's restrictors or gigglers, you know, if you're a technician, you've heard the word giggler. That's not a 13-year-old girl. That's a restrictor. You could clog those up. So then you might end up with a restriction of flow in addition to your initial problem.
Those flow restrictors kind of became popular back in what, 2005, 6, 10, somewhere in there, like somewhere in the 2000s, right?
Yeah, somewhere in the 2000s. They've been using them for years, even prior to that.
Right.
But somewhere in the early 2000s, a lot of the manufacturers, they started striving towards temperature stability.
Right.
And there's a benefit also along with those restrictors, that you're not just hammering, just fire hosing your puck that you've gently created and put in your portafilter and put in there. You're not just hammering it with that. So, and as far as temperature stability, backing up on that a little bit, we all rinse the portafilters and we rinse the screens off between shots. They wanted to restrict how much flow was happening during that time, because every ounce that you run out of there, you're refilling that boiler with cold water.
Yeah.
And so you're causing it to have clouds of cold water in there until it gets totally blended and mixed in there. So what hits your coffee puck can vary quite a bit, because
So how often do these get clogged? And I also wanted to mention that, like, again, I installed another espresso machine, and I was really happy to see that these flow restrictors were easily accessible, and no longer did you have to dive too deep into it. And I think that most shop owners that have that machine could probably do it themselves if they were very careful, and if they were not, they're a little mechanically inclined. And not dropping small parts, they could do it themselves and save a bunch of money. But again, call your technician to do it to keep the warranty and all that. But it makes technicians' lives a little bit easier, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, well, they've moved. Every manufacturer, I guess, they get together and go, hey, it's time to move the giggler. And so you will find them somewhere in the hydraulic system somewhere.
Well, here, how about this? Can I ask you a question? What about Astoria Gloria? We got a bunch of those floating around. Where's the flow restrictor in a Astoria Gloria? Do you know?
That's in the, there's a
drip
access tray. right in. Oh, you're right. On the Gloria, it is in the drip tray before the flow meters.
Is that okay? I was just guessing. I'm not sure. I was just guessing. I haven't done that yet. But
it is. It just looks like a brass fitting.
We should ask Sean that question. I bet you, hey, Sean, if you're watching, that's a question for you. Yeah. We got to get you on the show sometime. Talk about a story. Because, I heard that he went to Europe even and did the factory
tour. Sure.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of knowledge out there.
But like I said, those restrictors can be anywhere. In fact, today I worked on a San Remo and on a Cafe Racer, and because they've got some really cool pre-infusion hydraulics going on, they actually have, in essence, 3 of them on their system. So that was fun.
Well, hey, that's the end of my presentation, but I've got some random questions I could ask both of you. What do you want to do this summertime? What's your plans? What's your summertime plans?
Oh my, has nothing to do with coffee, but for my health, I really do need to do more exercise. And I like to cycle. Bicycle.
You like biking, Marty?
I do. That
was when I lived out in New York, I'd bike every single day, 365, rain, snow, whatever. I was biking. That was my commute. I just hated taking the subway.
I finally got my bike too. Like yesterday, I actually went downtown and came back, and that was too long. It's been too long. Yeah. But you got a lake up there, I think, right?
I've got a lake. It's a real nice asphalt road. It's about 4 miles around the lake, a few hills. So it gives you a little cardio challenge there. And we've got some really nice paved trails, some flat stuff around this area. There's a lot of retired train track trails that have been converted into
Those are awesome.
exercise trails. And there's a couple hundred miles, maybe 300 miles of those trails.
They need to connect them up to Omaha so we can
That
come down.
would be great. That'd be
Beautiful,
great.
like all the way down the Missouri. I think
Sure.
they got it partially way done.
Now I may be getting too old. I don't know, but I've done several MS 150s. That's 150-mile bike ride, and so I'd like to think that maybe there's another one of those in my future. We'll see.
That's right. Yeah, there is. You just it just might take longer. It depends, but you can use like one of those electric bikes. You know, it's like cruise for a while. You'll get that.
I think that's cheating.
Yeah, it is cheating. It's not a real bicycle, man.
I don't know.
Dietrich,
I
what
don't
are you
know.
doing? Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
man, I'm aside from doing the video stuff, I think we're planning to move out to LA late summer. So we'll be
Nice.
my girlfriend and myself, and then we've got a couple of other friends that are going to be heading out there as well, and we'll be kind of making the jump out to the West Coast. So
Nice.
yeah.
Can I give you another summer thing I want to do?
Go for it.
Let's hear it, Marty.
And then we're going to ask John what he wants to do. Okay, COVID took away probably, at least it ruined one of the dates of the event. Ben Helt had come to us some time back and with an idea, and he's always got some great ideas. But this particular one came into fruition and developed into probably the coolest coffee event I've ever been involved with.
Oh, what was that then?
And it's a wood-fired breakfast cook-off.
That's right. Yeah.
Coffee themed.
All right.
You had to use coffee in your food, and you had to pair it with coffee and have a reason. And one of the categories, and we had different categories. One of the categories was origin. And so you had to do some research, and what the judges wanted to be able to be presented was if they had gone to origin, what would the host cook them for breakfast?
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, that's tight. So you get like a world breakfast menu paired with the coffee from that kind of like region.
Exactly. And there was three, each team produced 3 different categories of breakfast.
I would be very
Not picking my
excited for some
favorites.
Ethiopian.
Absolutely. I was gonna say like Ethiopian breakfast, Guatemalan breakfast. I love Honduran breakfast, even though that's like Honduras, Guatemala, pretty close. But both of those foods are some of the tastiest, most beautiful foods ever because they're so rich. They're so good.
I will say this too. Recently, and this is completely off topic as well, but I went to the ENT doctor, and I think I had my ears clogged for the past like 4 years.
What?
I'm not kidding. I went in like a year ago, or not a week ago, and they looked at my ears because I went in for one clogged ear, and they looked at both of them, and they're like, they're both clogged. And they got one major blockage out where it was like causing deafness in one of my ears, and I was like, oh, I'm good now. And she's like, no, you're still clogged. Come back in a week after taking some eardrops. And let me tell you, when I got back home, I didn't realize like what my voice normally sounded like. Everything changed. I had like supersonic hearing for a couple hours, but it's normalized out. So go visit your ENT doctor maybe once a year just to get your ears cleaned out. And
Yeah, especially when you're getting to be my age, because those ear clogs, they don't come back like that. They're like, well, you're permanently damaged on the inside, and I'm like, I know.
Probably honestly what it's like for me right now as well. But John, what are you up to this summer? What do you got going on?
This new position is just blowing my mind. It's been a long time coming to be in this position, in this mindset, to put everything that everything that I've gathered in the coffee world and all of my experience coming to this point where I can say that putting it to work, putting it to use, and working with importers and roasters to, really get to understand and know what this program's about, this Eco Tierra and El Finca, and what's going on. A lot of people are doing a lot of good in the world. Michael Sheridan just I think he was just awarded the Sustainability Award for individual category for SCA, and all the work that he's done, it's been amazing. So just kind of working actually, but hopefully I can do a little bit of traveling after I get my COVID shot. I think that there's a trip to Peru. They're going to be opening a dry mill outside of Jaén, and I'm going to be going down to kind of meet the staff, and so I'll be fully vaccinated by then, and that'll be in August. But until then, a road trip to Colorado is absolutely a must, with bicycle, and just get up in the mountains and just breathe some of that air for a while, and just be thankful that we've got some really beautiful country, still, left in this world. So let's take care of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some good coffee shops that have developed in the last 10 years out there in Colorado.
Yeah, I haven't been out in a while. I mean, it's
20 years ago, when we first got into coffee, we went out to Colorado. Maybe not 20 years, so let's say 15 years ago. And we'd get up in the morning and go to try to find local, really cool coffee shops, and they weren't out there. At least we weren't finding them. We'd find them, but they didn't open till a little bit later. But they've gotten their act together in the last 15 years. They've really got some great coffee scenes going on out there.
And I think there's some things that are changing too in the industry. I was going to bring this up and I forgot. I put this on my note of like, gotta mention this because this is really cool. But there were some posts, I think with the SCA US chapter, with this lady. I think that she was in New York or in that area, I believe, but she was representing Vietnamese coffee and the display and the brewing of Vietnamese coffee, iced coffee, which was like by far the first beverage that I had that was what I would call specialty preparation, in a sense that it's different than just a mug of coffee with some cream in it. This was at a smaller Vietnamese restaurant in Lincoln, where we have like different communities in Lincoln. Vietnamese community in Lincoln, is pretty strong. And so that was my first introduction to Vietnamese coffee. Little did I know at that point it was Robusta, but it was also with condensed milk. But it tasted great to me. I loved it. But then I learned later on that I shouldn't like it because it's Robusta. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit, about how we've learned to dislike things before we've actually had the opportunity to be clear-minded about the experience and the situation that we're in. Like in Ethiopia, I went there and I had some coffee that was like one of the best coffees that I've ever had, but it was like toasted on a open fire. I'll tell you, if you did that in the States, you wouldn't get the same response or the same sort of respect or experience. So I will say this: I have been to a Robusta cupping. Q grader is for Arabica, and then there's R grader for Robusta. And the first one that I went to was in Tanzania. For the coffee core, and I was there.
How was that?
It blew my mind, because first off, it demonstrated that all Robusta coffee is not the same. There is good Robusta and there is bad Robusta, and there is a huge difference between the two. And there's a lot of space in between, and there's a lot of different value, and there's a lot of different markets. And some of those Robustas are getting some pretty good homes found in different communities in Europe, across Asia and Africa, and Central and South America and the United States. A lot of people love Robusta. So I think we, as a specialty coffee industry, should respect and open up our minds to, looking at different types of coffee experiences in a way that, the people who are preparing them, that's a cultural tradition, and it's something that they love and respect, and it's fun to join in on that love and that respect thing. That's like, oh, it's a Robusta, I don't like that. That's critical, But you know what? You might not like it, and that's fine. And I don't like all Robusta, I'll tell you that. But there's some that have been surprisingly soft, rounded. It has body, and adding some sweetness does make a pretty good drink.
Let me pop in
So,
for a
Yeah.
question too. I mean,
Yeah.
you've had some good Robustas. Then what is the significant characteristic differences that you've noticed between Robusta and Arabica?
Oh, between Robusta and Arabica.
Yeah.
Well, the sweetness factor, the acidity, well, all the attributes really, the depth of the cherry flavor, although you can get some, you can treat Robusta the same way you treat Arabica. You can do dry, which is most of its natural processed, with the skin on, or you can pulp it, partially pulp it. You can have semi-pulped or pulp natural, and you can do wet hull Robusta. You could do fully washed, and you could do honey. And people are doing that, and they're doing it in a way that's elevating the Robusta flavor profile and diversifying it a little bit even more. I mean, all coffee traditionally was kind of haphazardly at the time. Well, now we look back and and then we criticize haphazardly, but back then it was just how it was done, right?
Yeah.
But now there's a lot more attention and knowledge that has just gone all over the world to say, like, okay, we got Robusta. What if we treated it differently? And on the table, I'll tell you this, like if it's got insect damage or disease, or if it was grown at a certain elevation or place and it was post-harvest processing was different, the coffee could taste really good or really bad. If it's got insect damage, just like Arabica, it's going to have the same issues. It's going to taste hollow. It's going to taste,
Sure.
it's just going to taste bad. But if you treat it right, it may not be as exciting to the folks who like, including myself. I love, the geisha and the Caturra and the Typicas of the Arabica world. But,
Well, you mentioned good and bad Robusta. I've had good and bad geishas. I had that same lesson. My first experience with geisha was exquisite geisha. The Esmeralda and some Panama geishas that are out there. Just memorable cup of coffee. So my first convention I went to after that experience, everybody that was handing out a geisha on the showroom floor, I'm like, oh yeah, I need that. And I learned real quick that there's a difference in some of those coffees. There's just because it's geisha doesn't mean it's good.
Hey, and also that too, that's a good point. On the trade show floor, I went to, I think it was in Boston once. There was a beautiful 4-group espresso machine, fancy, Italian made. I pull a shot off of it, and the salesperson was really excited about it, hands it to me. I drink it, and I'm like, yeah, that's a straight shot of Robusta, like, wow,
Yeah.
It shocked me. I didn't like it. I'll be right up front. It was like, wow, I did not like that. But their audience, that's what they want, period.
Yeah.
Or else I wouldn't have put it in there.
Now, do you think that's
It's really interesting.
it not being dialed? I mean, do you think that you can have good Robustas on espresso, or is that
sure.
just something where you really just see Arabica shine because of the diversity of flavor and the sweetness that kind of comes out of it?
Well, I think it has its place in an espresso as traditional, like espresso blends, specifically probably in the late 70s, early 80s, you were having 10 to 20% Robusta, adding for that crema, that thickness, right, Marty? I mean, you've seen it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. It used to be pretty popular then. Then of course, single origin took over
Right.
the espresso world. But in recent years, we're finding people are getting back to the blends. And
There's someone who's never left either. Do you know who I'm talking about? Up in Seattle, he stuck to his espresso blend forever.
Forever and ever.
Yeah.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Okay. David Schromer.
Oh, well, he stuck to everything.
Yeah,
Not just
I
his
think
blend,
I don't know. He stuck to having Robusta in his blend for a very long time. I take it back. I don't know if it's still in there, if he's like reduced the amount or percentage, but it was like a huge deal at one point saying like, oh my gosh, he still has Robusta in his espresso. And I think that's a really interesting critical.
I think there's advantages to that. And I say that because I've had some really good espresso blends that had a percentage of Robusta in it. And it was a great blend. It would hold up with milk. you could drink it as a straight espresso. It was good. And I was surprised that it had some Robusta in it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of viewed it like this, that, you know, I like steak and I like black pepper on my steak. Now, I would never eat a spoonful of black pepper, but that steak is a lot better with that black pepper on it. And so that's kind of how I see about some of these coffees that may not taste the best by themselves, but they as a blend, they really do add a layer of flavor.
Well, that's a great point too, because of like thinking about Ethiopians or natural processed. I mean, those were, a part of a blend component for espresso for a lot of people. And on its own, it could be a little bit too fruity for some. Like a lot of people don't like naturals, and other people are just, head over heels about it. So I think it is like teach their own. And I'm not saying I'm out there I'm gonna love Robusta now, but I do want to say that, loving Robusta is an interesting path to go down. And I would say explore it, check it out, and respect it, and go get some Vietnamese iced coffee this summer, the way that it's prepared, and drink up that sugar and that beauty and that wonder. And
definitely helps when there's condensed milk in it.
No, it's so much better. I'm just like, why am I doing this? Like this Chemex with no sugar? It's like, this is like boring brown water. Okay, well, never mind. I'm just.
John, you bring up a good point, because how many times has that just gorgeous cup of coffee that we can remember in our past really was part of a bigger picture going on? It was the people we were with, it was the sunrise or the sunset, or the, something else going on that was happening that made that whole experience that much better. And that coffee was just one element of that magic.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting point when a lot of people come in, or when I had a shop, they'd come in and say, like, I went to Costa Rica or Panama and I had the best cup of coffee I ever had there. And I'm like, well, okay. And that could have been true, but I think it might have been more of the experience that they were having while drinking a cup of coffee, because most of the coffee that's consumed internally in certain areas come from Vietnam or from Brazil, and then are blended in and then shipped into Honduras. And then the export grade good stuff gets shipped out. So the locals drink, instant, Robusta sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Holly's chiming in too into the chat, and she said she wanted to agree with Marty, and that the quality and the experience surrounding the coffee make a huge difference. Something I will say too that I would love to see you guys chat about, and maybe even have on someone about specifically, is milk makes such a huge difference in terms of, like, even like from macchiato all the way to a latte, right? And obviously the espresso has an impact with that as well. And obviously, like, some of your lighter naturals aren't going to taste good as a latte in comparison to something that'll really cut through.
Good point.
Like a Brazilian, like that'll like really have some impact. But I think something that's interesting as well is region to region, milk suppliers change significantly. And in Nebraska, I remember there was a milk supplier that was around for a while. I think it was Prairie Land, and their milk steamed incredible. Turns out that they were kind of maybe in trouble with a little bit of like health department kind of things.
Well, they had to do some things.
Exactly. They had to make, but you can take two different milks as well and have a whole completely different experience with your cappuccino, even if it's the same exact shot. And that even comes down to like the age of the milk as well. And I do find that interesting, is like going from place to place. Like, there were certain regions that I've hit when I've been traveling where it's been like, when I get a cappuccino, it is just outstanding. And then there are some places where I could tell that cappuccino is not as good solely because those milk sugars aren't quite as prominent.
Well, two things that like really I found out when I went to go to a dairy farm up in Minneapolis when I was working up there, just to kind of explore that exact point, because they were pulling shots of espresso with this milk that was coming from a local dairy. It's supposed to be really good, but it was not foaming properly. It was kind of separating, really flat and bubbly, kind of like a watery foam. And we were kind of figuring out, like, is it the espresso or is it the milk, right? So I took a tour of this dairy farm, and I talked to the dairy farmer, and he just kind of blew my mind about how much goes goes into producing milk, but also the content and you know, the processing there. I'd love to have someone on the show talk to us about that. But what he did say, two things, is like during the wintertime, the producing cattle, or I don't know, the dairy cows stay very stagnant, and they kind of reserve all of their energy as much as possible. So they're not really utilizing their muscles much, but they're producing a lot of fat because they're eating stuff and it's turning into fat, and that fat goes into the milk. And what they're eating is really important. It's called silage, or basically hay that's, you know, kind of been fermented a little bit and then stored, and it's very consistent diet. So you get a consistent diet that they are fed over the wintertime, where they're not moving and producing a lot of fat. That milk rocks for making real high quality milk. Now in the springtime, it's time to get out. Like everybody leaves, right? Like we haven't done Coffee Tech Talk 2 weeks because we're out riding our bikes and stuff, right? So we're getting exercise. You know, we're eating a more diverse diet because now we can go out and graze like the prairie grass. Like this is what I do. And then I'm like, go pick some mushrooms.
John's just out in the yard, just chewing on things.
I'm just cutting it up. And like, but the thing about it is like, your muscles are now being exercised. There's not as much fat being produced into your milk, and your diet is all over the place. So as you know, like you're working with a small dairy farmer, and those cows are put out to pasture in a positive way. Is that a negative thing? Anyway, put out the pasture to feed. It's going to change your milk composition, and that's what was happening with the milk that we were receiving. But it was an easy fix. All you have to do is talk to your dairy farmer, and they have these abilities to calculate and condition their milk to, because this was not homogenized, and it was not what's the other word? Pasteurized, right? So this was like, but it was probably pasteurized, but not homogenized. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, because you have to pasteurize it to make it legal. Unless you want to do raw milk, you can't serve that. But no, that was a really interesting conversation. And Dietrich, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is something that I'd really like to explore, the plant-based milks and the processings that happen and that are involved in why do they have a barista series that works well and those that do not, and what's the difference, and you know, what are they adding to the milk, and is it safe? And it probably is.
I'll also chime in briefly with that as well. I think plant-based milk alternatives are, and every barista behind a bar has experimented and seen and steamed different types of milks. And early on, if you're using a soy milk that's a non barista series treated soy milk, you're gonna have that that curdling almost effect as well, and it's gonna be gross to the customer, and it's not gonna present as well, and it's also not gonna hold your steam as well.
Well, I guess that's what lids are for.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's also why I think a lot of people are enjoying almond milk with their coffee as well. Or not almond, but oat milk. Oats naturally has a little bit more fat content in it. And so like if you were to steam just a regular oat milk non-barista series compared to like a regular soy milk or almond milk non-barista series, you're going to get a much better steam out of your milk with the oat. However, from what we had looked at, it seemed like I'm probably gonna be wrong about this, which is perfect for an actual episode, but xanthan gum, I believe, or it's a stabilizer that allows it to like hold together a little bit more. That seems to be the addition that I noticed in a lot of the barista series, at least in the soy.
Well, xanthan gum, I used that in a competition once to gelify and like foam. I made foam out of like grapefruit juice using xanthan gum, and it was really cool. We put that in a shaker, and it comes out really cool. But I don't, and that's a great. I think it's a safe natural byproduct of. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Well, John, you mentioned the competitions. The competition themselves, the barista competitions. There's always somebody there that is highlighting the milk story that's going into their product. So there's, a lot of lessons to be learned off barista competitions.
And to be fair too, the best mocha I've ever had was an oat milk mocha. It kicked all my, it was outstanding.
I'll tell you this. Where were
Good.
you though?
I was in
Where
New
were you?
York. It was the early. It was right when Oatly was launching its like barista stuff, and it was a small coffee shop in New York, and I had just a banging mocha. And see, I would go there and I would order mochas because they were like okay at espresso, but yet one day they were like, "Hey, we got oat milk. Do you want to try it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." You know, and it was spectacular, and it was
Okay, so that's a fair situation because I thought you might have been like in the Alps or something in Europe. You're like, "They're just
yeah,
at the best mocha
it
with some
wasn't
oats
an
in it."
experience, but I will say, I mean, like, I think that there is something to be like considered with like milk alternatives and what flavors they are bringing that regular milk is not as well.
And that's a good comparison. That'd be a great barista competition where you have maybe like three different. Maybe Marty, you might have heard. Has someone done this where they use like oat and they use three different plant-based materials and make three different drinks? But I don't. They can't do that because you have to make them all the same. But like that's a really interesting pairing to be like, no, this drink only comes with oat milk, period, because it has this espresso, and this one will only come with whole milk because it has this espresso. I would respect that tremendously if someone took that much effort and had that many coffees, but also just wouldn't say like, no, we can't put this espresso with this milk because exactly what Dietrich was saying, it would curdle and you would hate it. And we're not going to do that for you. Like we found the magic blend, for us to serve to you. And I think that would be an interesting twist if anybody does that. I don't know.
No, I don't know about in competition if anyone has done that, but it reminds me, that story reminded me of a recipe that we had with summer coming on and cold coffees being popular. One of my favorite cold drink recipes, and you can't do too much because there's calories in it to some degree.
Come on.
Well, it's not as bad as just whole milk, but one of my favorite alternative milks is almond milk. And if you take like the brand I like is the Blue Diamond almond milk, and you mix that 50-50 over ice with a cold brew, and you can punch it up a little bit by making your cold brew natural, like an Ethiopian natural or something that's fairly fruity and sweet. If you blend almond milk, the chocolate almond milk with that coffee, that cold coffee, 50-50 over ice, you would swear that you melted a fudge sickle.
Hey,
I swear.
Audience, if you want that recipe, audience, you go to workshopcoffee.org or com, and Marty will have a recipe.
It's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
No, but no,
Sorry.
we definitely, when we were just on cold brew before I had like the little home espresso machine, we would definitely, when we wanted our mocha cold brews, we would utilize the oat chocolate, the Oatly chocolate oat milk, and 50-50 that sucker. Man, yeah, when you get like the natural like chocolate ones, like those can be banging. I mean, they're really good. But
absolutely.
I will say too, we just picked up like a Dutch. Well, this was a while ago. My girlfriend likes to make mochi brownies. So it's rice flour based brownies. They're much more like spongy and squishy and really moist. So she utilizes a Dutch dark chocolate called Drost. And when you mix that with like you do one part Drost and then 3 parts brown sugar, that's going to be probably the best chocolate syrup you'll ever have. That is fantastic. But yeah.
Well, hey guys, it's 8:00 and I'm ready to hit the bed. I'm getting old these days. I don't know, this time change is kind of messed me up. I feel like we should maybe even, I just said that, but like maybe we should have our show later, but I think we're doing good. Next week we might have a guest. We might not be here. I don't know. What do you guys think? We'll figure it out.
Oh, let's be here and we'll line up a guest. We'll get somebody.
I'm ready to do it.
Hey, audience, it could be you.
Yeah, let's have you on the show. And if you're watching and you've already been on the show, maybe you should be on the show again. Maybe not. Why don't you give us a call? See us later.
Subscribe.
Bye.
Subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe. Great, thanks.